The CoinDesk Spotlight is brought to you by Nexo, the place to earn on Bitcoin, Ethereum, and more.
Welcome back. All right, SEC Chair Gary Gensler warning that decentralized finance projects aren't immune to regulation. Gensler telling the Wall Street Journal that while some aspects of DeFi platforms may be decentralized, they can be highly centralized in other aspects. Joining us now to discuss is Camila Russo, CEO of DeFi-focused media platform, the Defiant, and author of The Infinite Machine, a book on Ethereum. Great to have you on the show, Camila. So, DeFi platforms reason that since they're decentralized, there are no middlemen, they can't be regulated. So Gensler is coming in and saying, pretty much, I don't believe in this decentralized theater. There are some centralized aspects of it. So it sounds like regulation is coming to DeFi. What do you make of Gensler's comments?
Well, I think I have to agree with Gensler in part. I think he's right to say that some DeFi protocols aren't as decentralized as others, and that makes them susceptible to regulatory risk. What I think the latest pressure on the regulatory front in the US will do to DeFi is just push it to be truly decentralized. So anywhere where there is a single point of failure and an ability for regulators to come in and crack down, I think these projects will start to move those centralized points to the community. So making their platforms actually non-custodial, decentralizing governance, having token-based decision systems, going fully anonymous, all these things, running smart contracts on-chain permissionlessly, doing taking all these steps so that it becomes harder and harder for regulators to crack down. But I don't think that is going to ultimately bring DeFi to the mainstream. I think a friendly regulatory framework in the US will be needed, because ultimately DeFi platforms will need the contacts to fiat and to the regular or like traditional finance at some point. Like, people need to cash out, they need to bring in their dollars into DeFi. So you can't have this completely separate financial system. You need these bridges. And it's at these bridges that DeFi can be regulated and regulators can crack down on the space. So I think that, all this talk from Gensler and in the U.S. infrastructure bill, it has really catalyzed the DeFi space to mobilize and band together. There was just this huge response on crypto Twitter last week. Everyone calling their senators. There's DAOs forming to start lobbying in Washington, and we already have lobbying groups doing that work as well with Coin Center and the Blockchain Association. So I think this has really just like spurred people to action and to take a more active role in Washington, where DeFi has been a little bit absent. So I think it will be both. Like, DeFi will start to become even more decentralized, but there will also be a push for the community to get friendlier politicians and regulators in the US.
So you literally wrote the book on Ethereum. Ether's been doing really well recently. Recently had a very big news event, which was the hard fork. And it seems like maybe coincidentally, but right around the time of the hard fork, or right after the hard fork, ETH started going up. And actually the market also started going up. Do you think that Ether is driving up other market prices, or do you think it's just coincidental?
It's hard to say, what is, moving crypto markets. I would think the biggest driver right now is macro, just the amount of dollars that are being printed into the economy is pushing all risk assets. There's just trillions of dollars being poured into the market, and those dollars need to go somewhere. So people are buying everything from houses to crypto and ETH. But I also think Ether's just fundamentals and as you mentioned, the London hard fork is also pushing prices. I mean, it's like a perfect storm of the macro environment plus fundamentals for ETH.
Hi, Camila. So speaking of pushing around prices, what do you think the effects will be on yields as Ethereum goes to proof of stake? What will be the effect on DeFi yields? Will it go up? Will it go down as everything tries to find its equilibrium? What do you think is the net effect on DeFi?
As Ethereum goes to proof of stake with the merge expected late this year or sometime next year, I think what will happen is that the yield from staking will become sort of like the similar to the U.S. Treasuries in the U.S. The staked ETH will become the safest yield on DeFi, on Ethereum, and that will basically allow investors to diversify their yield. So if you are an investor who wants to get the safest yield on Ethereum, you will be able to stake ETH and get returns that way. If you want to take some additional protocol risk, you'll be able to stake on other protocols or yield farm or lend your assets on lending platforms like Aave and Compound and so on. So I think what it will cause is to just diversify the risk profile that investors have on top of Ethereum.
Speaking of risk, in some of the publicity around the recent hacks that we're seeing in DeFi specifically, is that having an effect on overall yields? Is that going to have an effect on yields going forward and potentially affect the growth of the DeFi industry as a whole?
No, I don't think the latest hacks have an impact on yield. I think the biggest thing driving yields right now is crypto prices. So if there's a bull market and traders expect to make a lot of money lending and borrowing on DeFi platforms, yields go up because investors expect a bigger return from borrowing crypto on DeFi. If that expected return falls, then DeFi yields fall. So I think that's kind of what's moving that market. The effect on DeFi hacks, I think what it does is just, it really pushes developers in this space to find safer ways to build these protocols. So, there are things right now like decentralized insurance and different ways of making these protocols safer, like white hat groups coming together. Of course, the auditors. I mean, that's a great business there. I know they're booked for months to come. So I think the industry as a whole is just aware that for it to draw in a larger group of users, it needs to become safer. And so what these hacks do is just put additional pressure on the developers to do that.
Camilla, a lot of developers who try to build on Ethereum feel it is too cumbersome, expensive, and slow. I know they're going to ETH to proof of stake, but could Ethereum lose out to Solana, Terra around the corner, and even Cardano, which is seeing a huge spike today because of their smart contracts developments?
Well, yeah, it's certainly possible. It's been kind of the the claim that all of the new smart contract platforms make, that they'll overtake Ethereum with their lower fees and faster transaction times. And we have seen some activity on networks like Solana, Binance Smart Chain earlier this year. Of course, people will argue these networks are a lot more centralized than Ethereum, and so you can't really compare them. But I mean, I think there's use cases for all of these networks. So I think it's certainly possible. Ethereum's competitive advantage continues to be its larger community, and that's just really hard to replicate. And layer 2s aim to improve this high transaction costs and slow times. Confirmation times.
Speaking of communities, I had a chance to read your book, which was excellent, by the way. And
awesome.
In it, you describe the Ethereum community as quite a cutthroat community, in the beginning at least. And I'm wondering, is that still the case? What is the culture like now?
What do you mean by cutthroat?
There was a lot of infighting, and there was a lot of ousting of members in the early days.
Right. Well, I would differentiate from Ethereum's founding group to the Ethereum community itself. So the Ethereum community is, the developers and users of all the Ethereum-based protocols. So I think right now the community is really diverse. It just attracts people who want to build all sorts of applications on top of Ethereum. I think that's kind of the biggest difference I saw when reporting on the book, the difference between the Ethereum community and the Bitcoin community, is that in Bitcoin, the community there was driven by the belief in this like censorless money and this like digital gold aspect to Bitcoin. So it's more like the libertarian, like monetary, like sound money aspect of the network. In Ethereum, because it's like a more flexible smart contract layer to build any sort of application, not just not just aiming to be peer-to-peer money. It just attracts a more diverse community that maybe some are in it for this like sound money aspect, others will be in it because they just want to build different applications, games, DeFi, NFTs, and now with NFTs, the community has become even more diverse. I mean, we've seen kind of this inflow of artists and musicians and all sorts of different kinds of people that just like weren't present in the community before. I think it's been great to see that shift from a space that was mostly aimed at financial applications, and so it drew traders and investors to a space that's drawing artists and creators. So it's been great to see that shift.